This video I'll show you guys, I'll demonstrate to you guys, guide you through to how the overdrive transmission works. The Borg Warner overdrive transmission, to be more precise. This particular model, this is the T96. Okay, so maybe some of the other overdrives might be a little bit different. I don't know if there are other overdrives out there. So just once again, this is the Borg Warner T96. I'd like to thank Don for the new hat. He says I look old-fashioned, so he gave me an old-fashioned hat. Thanks. But okay, let's get right to it. For those of you that don't know, the Borg Warner, the overdrive, it was manufactured in the early 30s, I believe. So it's been around for a while, and a couple million of them were produced and used over the years up until late 1970s, I think. But what it does is it adds an extra gear. Okay, that's what an overdrive technically means. Okay, direct drive is when the engine is directly driving the drive shaft, the wheels. Okay, so the engine turns, the drive shaft turns just as fast as the engine turns. Okay, more technical terms, the output turns just as fast as the input. If you're in first gear or in second gear, that doesn't happen. Okay, the engine has to turn, lower gears, the engine has to turn a lot more for the output to turn less. Okay, so the engine, for example, in first gear, it's approximately, this transmission, it's about 3 turns of the input, 3 turns of the engine, 1 turn of the output shaft. Okay, so when you get to direct drive, it's in a 1-to-1 ratio. Okay, and overdrive is just as the name suggests, over that. So the engine is actually turning slower than the output shaft. Okay, so that allows the car to go a lot faster. If you've driven a bicycle with gears, right, it would be equivalent to like a, I don't know, 5th gear, 4th gear, depending on the bike. Okay, but what they actually did is they actually added another feature. Okay, they didn't just add an extra gear. They added a set of planet gears. Okay, this is what these things are called. I'll show you in just a second. And they added this here, and it's missing the. I'll just show you. It's not missing. It's just. And they added this, which looks sort of like a bearing flipped on, like in reverse, right? So there's little cylinders that they go on there like that. Okay, all around. It will fall off now. So for the purpose of this demonstration, I'll just leave these outside here, and but just keep them in mind when I'm referring to this here. These are called by the manual clutch rollers. That's what the if you have the overdrive manual, it's really easy to find in the internet. The manual calls it those things clutch rollers, and this is called the clutch cage or something like that. For this demonstration, I'll just call it the clutch gear. Okay. So they actually added that as well. And so I think what we'll start is okay, so first of all, for those of you that aren't familiar, what they did is they wanted to make this transmission, they wanted to add an extra gear without having to change the existing transmissions, right? Because that costs money, time, and just complicates things. So what they did is they got the existing T96 which is just a 3-speed manual. There's only 3 gears inside here, not 3 actual gears, right? There's actually a couple. There's 5, but 3 gears. I mean, there's first gear, second gear, and third gear, and reverse, obviously, which uses the same gear, but with a different gear at the bottom. Okay, so basically there's just 2 shift levers here. If you shift it one this way, there's reverse. Shift it the other way, it's first gear. Then on the other side, you have second and third. Okay, so 2 speeds for each, 4 speeds in total, including reverse. Okay, and you'd have to do this manually. Now, the first thing I'd like to point out, if you haven't watched, you might want to watch my disassembly video. But really, there's just one. I haven't done much to it at all. Just put this back here. It's just actually I'll leave this out. It's just a big case, big housing here. There's a big gear, the big output shaft here. That's all it is. So on this side, what you should notice is it's still manual. Okay, there's no governors, there's no solenoids, no electrical circuits, nothing. Which means you can already infer that there's nothing that actually changes these gears for you. Okay, so that's one of the first considerations. This is not going to be an automatic transmission here. Okay, it's actually automatic, pretty much automatic. It's called semi-automatic, which is half automatic, but we'll get into that later. But here, this side is still just a plain 3 speeds, okay, as it was for since I don't know 1940s, okay, something like that. Still the same. This doesn't change. So whatever you're doing down here, okay, whatever's going on here, it's not changing the gears for you. So if you start off in first gear, you're going to stay in that first gear. Okay, start off, if you're in second, you're going to stay in second. If you're third, you're going to stay in third. Okay, so just keep that in mind. That's one of the first important things. Now over here, see there's these 2 holes here. There's a bigger hole in the middle. There's actually a seal there as well. It's a little bit worn out. There's a seal inside the solenoid. And here goes this thing here, which is called the solenoid. Okay, all it is an electromagnet that causes, you put electricity on it, and this thing here, it's called a plunger, this shaft here, goes in and it goes back. Okay, normally it's retracted, it's inside, so you have to energize it for it to come out, okay, for it to extend further. So normally, if everything's off, it's just as I'm holding it now. When you put electricity on it, the windings, do your research on electromagnets, how they work. It's really simple. Electricity causes this to go forward. Okay, if I can sort of pull it by hand. Hopefully you can see that. Let's zoom in here a little. Okay, see, I can extend it by hand. There's a pretty tough spring in there that keeps it retracted. Okay, so set this aside here, and it goes into this hole here. There's a hole there. Okay, now just move you guys around here. Now the next thing to note, okay, so once again, this side, it's completely manual. Okay, so whatever we do here, we'll study this side, but just keep in mind that this side is ultimately what controls this side, because I'll just remove here for a second these gears for you to see. This shaft here, you see, it extends from there, which means since these gears, these 2 gears here, since these 2 gears are on this shaft, what we can then learn, what's implied by this is that manual transmission, which is this side, right, this is the manual transmission, controls these gears, okay? So they're not independent, okay? This side controls these gears. Okay, as you can see, the shaft, by the way, the shaft here, this is just, you see, it's just a plain shaft with splines here. On the other transmission, the other T96, still the T96, but it's the slightly different T96, there's actually sort of a helical, how can I say, helical chamfer on it. I'm not sure what that's for. Maybe to get more oil. I don't know. But this one is just nice, plain and straight, very simple, straightforward. Here are the splines. Okay. So if I put first gear in here, out comes first gear here. Second gear, out comes second gear here. Third gear comes out here on this shaft. Okay. Now, just move this around so that I can see as well. Right. Now, this is the main assembly. As you can see, there are only basically 3 pieces. Okay, there's this piece here, which comes out like that. This is called the sun gear by the manual. Okay, goes in like that. Then there's this bigger piece here. It's called the pinion cage. There's these little smaller gears here. They're called the pinions. And here, as you can see, there's splines here. There's teeth. These teeth are actually wider and therefore better than the one on the other overdrive, by the way. And inside it, all the way down there, it is splined. As you can hopefully see there. Yeah, I think you can. Splined right here where my finger is. Okay, now and then there's this other sort of gear here, and so you see it's got like wedge shaped, lots of wedges on it. Okay, now right now it's actually connected to the other gear here, to the pinion cage here, through this this U-ring here. Right in the middle here, there's a U-ring. Okay, but it is also splined. The clutch gear, it's also splined there. Can you see that? Let me see. See the splines there? Okay, now this therefore means that both these gears, their splines go onto here. Okay. The sun gear has no splines inside. So if I put it on here, see, it just spins on top of the output shaft here, which is now, since they're, if this in the manual, and this is another clarification before I go any further. The manual gear, the manual transmission, has an input shaft, and this is the output shaft. Now with the overdrive, there's actually another shaft. So the output shaft of the manual transmission becomes what they call the main shaft. Okay, but it's basically the output shaft of the manual transmission. Okay, now as you can see, since the sun gear is not splined, you can already conclude that the output shaft has no direct, it's hard to explain this sometimes, has no direct effect on the sun gear. Okay, So you could, this main shaft could be spinning at thousands of RPMs, but since the sun gear here is not splined, there's nothing nothing happens to it. Okay. I mean, it will sort of tend to spin a little bit because of the friction, right? Once there's oil in here, it'll spin more. You see, if I'm spinning the transmission there with my hand here, and it does actually spin a little bit along. You see, because of friction. There's considerable amount of force there. So, but anyways, that's pretty much negligible. Okay. We'll get to that later. Now inside there, as you can see, the sun gear, the smaller side, these sides, they separate, by the way, but I don't separate them right now. But this smaller side, it goes into the this blocker plate here. I'm going to call it blocker gear. Okay. The manual actually calls it a slightly different name. Blocker ring, I believe. Let me just quickly check here. I don't know, just look it up. I'm going to call it blocker ring, okay? And as you can see there, it's got teeth, okay? It's got some holes here, probably for oil to get through. But it is also not splined onto the main shaft, okay? So if I turn the main shaft, you see that nothing's happening to it, okay? It's not turning, it's not doing anything, you see? Now if I turn it by hand, you can sort of hear a sound. Listen to that. Sort of a click. Hear that? I turn it both ways. That's because there's a big C ring behind it that's attached to it just via friction, okay? It's just by pressure. So if I actually force this, it will turn, you see? It will turn by hand, but it's got a lot of friction on it, and it's supposed to be like that, okay? We'll get to why later, okay? But it is in the manual. It is supposed to be like that. If yours is just turning freely, then you have a problem. Okay, it is supposed to have friction like that, but what you can do is you can give it like sort of a third of a turn back and forth very easily, okay? And that's where the clicks are, because that C-clamp is doing this inside it, behind it, okay? I'll open that up and soon, just to show you guys what I mean, okay? Then right here is this is called the pawl, okay? And you'll see that the solenoid here, it matches the hole there, and then what it does is there's a slot, both sides slot on the solenoid, that you slide it in like that. See? Let's see. Let me just tilt that up a little bit. Slide it in, and if I just leave it like this, it will come out. See? Now if I twist it, then the round part twists inside and it no longer comes out. You see, it's locked. Okay, so you see there's so many more. No, I don't think so. There's a slot. You see, if I hold it like this, it looks flat. Then if I turn it, you can see that it's round. You see that? Flat, round. You see, flat, round. So I push it in like that, flat, so that it slides, so that it's able to get in. Then you twist it. It's no longer able to come out. Okay. So what this does is it's going to push this. Push and pull it, okay? It's also supposed to pull it back. Okay, so if you put this solenoid here in the wrong way, what'll happen is it'll They'll push that pawl in. That's the pawl. They'll push it in, but it won't pull it back. That causes problems, okay? Just make sure that the solenoid doesn't come out when you pull it. When you, pull it out, okay? Now that we're done with the sun gear, like I said, now back to these gears. Both of them are splined. So once again, since they're both splined, this means that they are completely dependent on the main shaft, which is the output shaft of the manual transmission. Whatever happens here, okay, these are directly dependent on the main shaft, okay? So if I put a first gear in here, these two are going to spin. If I put a second gear, they're going to spin. They're always going to spin unless I have the manual transmission in neutral. So that leads, which means in the big picture, the overdrive parts, they are always spinning, okay? Unless the transmission is in neutral over here, okay? And that's sort of incomplete, and we'll just have to learn things later on. Now, before I go any further, it's just interesting to note that, you know, as you can see, there's only basically 3 big parts to this. I mean, you could say 4 here, and 5, but anyways, there's just a few components, okay? And this transmission is actually able to shift through various gears automatically, and to where it's not automatically, you don't even have to use the clutch. It adds an extra gear. So it's just completely, how can I say, it's just amazing what these guys did. With just a few set of gears, some simple components, they were able to make something that's just simply brilliant, okay? Look at other transmissions, especially modern ones, fucking garbages, you know, fucking pieces of shit. There's thousands, literally thousands of components, switches, this and that, okay? Even the old automatics, they were pretty complex, even then, okay? For those of you that don't know, there's a popular, you know, dumb belief that, you know, that classic cars, you know, 60s, 70s, and older, they were all manual. That's just biggest bullshit that's you know I've ever heard. Okay, the automatic transmissions, I believe they came out in in the 30s, guys. So you know it's been there for a long time. You can get a classic car that shifts, you know, automatically, silently, you know, just like a modern car, like better than modern cars, okay? So that's a popular misconception that, you know, all old cars were manual, okay? That's not true, okay? Now this transmission, so that, as I was saying, okay, they've just managed to make a couple of components, a couple of gears, and they're actually fairly simple individually,